We're diving into some of POPCROSS's zanier characters now, including a venomized former serial killer and a gopher with a ray gun. One of the weirdest sentences I think I've ever said. Let's dive into it. You ever have those out-of-body moments where you just listen to yourself and think, what in the world am I talking about? I feel like I'm going to sound absolutely crazy in today's voiceover with the strange lore for these two. We have to start with Baxell's prison, again. I promise you guys, I will stop talking about this particular saga, but Baxell's is one of the main stories that POPCROSS used to introduce us to so many characters in one fell swoop, including the two that I'm going to talk to you about. Okay, let's get into it. If you haven't watched any of my previous videos, I will give a brief summary. We hear the story of Baxell's prison through the lens of Jake Tajan, writing down all the crazy things that have been happening in his journal. Along the way, Jake gets tricked into participating in a fight ring, run by a squid-faced man named Bestar, where he briefly meets unkillable Kate, who helps him move on to the next level of Baxell's. There, he meets Anna, who helps him get further through the levels of Baxell's, where they meet our first character, just known as Skinner. His real name isn't known, but his nickname is apt for what his frightening abilities are. Skinner was brought to Baxell's prison because he was a vicious serial killer in his world. In Baxell's, he got lobotomized by Bestar, now programmed to be Bestar's grunt, chasing after people like Jake, who had escaped Bestar's fighting ring. But Skinner has small suction cups along his fingers and the palm of his hands, that if attached to your skin, well, you guessed it, get pulled off, hence his sickening nickname. Luckily, Jake had Anna, who helped them both phase through Skinner's frightening attempts at skinning them, as he continued to follow the two down more levels of Baxell's. Eventually, Jake and Anna were at the last believed level to help them escape Baxell's prison, the Fight for Your Life stage, where the level would make 10 aggressive duplicates of our characters, powers and all while trying to find the key to get out of Baxell's, later discovered to be a piece of the multiversal orb. As Jake and Anna were heading down the elevator to start on this level, Skinner had surprised and jumped into the elevator at the last second, making the ride down the most intense ride of Jake and Anna's life. But Jake wound up grabbing Skinner's head in the process, using his healing powers on Skinner, who suddenly became docile, stopping his attack. When Jake stopped, Skinner pleaded for Jake to continue, and the three wound up working together, riding on top of Skinner's shoulders to escape the Fight for Your Life stage. Skinner was a formidable shield and large target, Anna helping them phase through the enemies, and Jake keeping their prior hunter happy. The three found the key and actually escaped from Baxell's back to their home world. But again, if you've watched my previous videos, you know what happens next. The overseer of Jake and Anna's world, Fear herself, swallowed Skinner whole with a terrifying shadow-like shark entity, and sent him back to Baxell's. Then she bargained with Jake and Anna to get rid of their gems of the angelic, the items that gave both of them their powers, or they would get sent back to Baxell's. The teens didn't give in and were sent back. Meanwhile, in my previous vid, I talked about Sterling and Jill watching an interaction between Dresden Oakland and Astra, who were talking about previous overseer bonds and favors. Astra was holding a sack that she was trying to give to Dresden. Dresden begrudgingly took the sack, and Astra walked back into her dimension, not knowing that Sterling was still in Baxell's. Dresden then encountered Sterling, pleased at Sterling's arrival, and gave him the sack, leaving Sterling behind. Sterling, curious, opened the sack to find an unconscious gopher in a tiny little suit. Sterling was immediately enraptured and said, "Hey, little gooby," when suddenly the gopher whipped its eyes open and pointed a ray gun at Sterling's face. Sterling, both surprised and amused by this entire interaction, held his hands up in surrender, promising the gopher he meant him no harm. After the two encountered some crab people, the gopher showing how trigger-happy it was, and Sterling dubbing him Gooby, the two of them bump into the dejected Jake, Anna, and Skinner. After finding out their situation, Sterling promises to help all of them escape Baxell's prison, including Anna's friend, Unkillable Kate. Here, Sterling dubs Jake, Anna, Skinner, and Gooby the B-Team, as they work their way out of Baxell's prison. Once that saga concluded, everyone escaping safe and sound, Jake and Sterling take Skinner to a psych ward, where Jake pops by every once in a while to try and heal Skinner more, along with the efforts of the ward. And Gooby the Gopher stays along with the Sharp Gang. But the story isn't over yet. When the majority of the Sharp Gang go out for a lake day, bringing along Skinner as well, the group gets attacked by various symbiotes, taking over many of the heroes' bodies. Jake discovered that the symbiotes hated his energy projectiles, utilizing this advantage to try and help the others escape their symbiotes. Eventually they found the host of the symbiotes, who dubbed himself Scythe, currently being hosted by an irritating man named Nikolai Kage. But Jake quickly gets Scythe off of Kage, but wasn't able to stop Scythe from crawling over and taking over Skinner. Jake and the group were fearful of what the psychiatric patient would do, But instead, Scythe extended tentacles to take back the rest of the symbiotes off the attacking entities and remaining heroes. Scythe then talked to Jake, revealing to Jake that Skinner not only had remorse for his terrible past actions, but had a deep affection for Jake and all that he was doing to heal him. Scythe explained to Jake that it hadn't attached to a host that had such positive feelings for a person in a long time, and asked to remain with Skinner if it was okay with Jake. Jake and the Sharp Gang agreed, now having a strong symbiote on their side, while also having a way to communicate to Skinner during this healing process. We got a recent cameo of the pair in the Trismegistus Academy series, and as always, they were kind and compassionate towards Jake and the gang, a wholesome ending to this reformed villain. But back to Gooby. The reason that this Gopher was placed in back cells in the first place, because it had tried several times to exact revenge on Benny Sharp, and it also endangered several members of the Sharp Gang in order to do so. It's said that Benny, before turning over a new leaf, tried to drown the Gopher. As Benny alleged, it was to see if gophers could breathe underwater. Whatever circumstances led to this terrible event, the Gopher did not let this go. Gooby then stole a ray gun from Benny and used that weapon and later his own overseer abilities to try and kill Benny close to a dozen times. But after escaping with Sterling and the B team from back cells, Gooby had at least let go of his desire to kill Benny and decided to play a different game. In one of Benny Sharp's strange episodes, he and Anna found Gooby, Vasilia's armored squirrel friend, Zashitnik, pulling a captured villain towards the Sharp Gang's base. They found out that Gooby had pretended to bring Zashitnik to Eloise Ludum for one of her dome matches, where the two successfully messed up parts of her arena and had captured her right-hand man, Harold the Herald, in the process. Sharp was still skeptical of Gooby's reformed ways, but as the shenanigans ensued in this episode, Anna pushing Sharp into being nicer to the Gopher, since Sharp was also a reformed villain, Sharp went to apologize to Gooby, who revealed to Sharp that he could actually speak and that his real name was Archibald, chuckling in the revelry that no one would believe that the Gopher could actually talk. Archie held this over Benny's head for a while, still feigning that he couldn't speak. The Sharp Gang even egged on the ruse for a little while alongside Gooby, adding a little more punishment to Sharp about trying to drown the Gopher. But now Archibald is also a member of the Sharp Gang, adding even more weirdness to this band of superheroes. If you guys like my art style, stay tuned because I've got some fun videos planned, especially around the spooky season. A witch-based magical girl group, as well as some spooky story time. So if that sounds exciting to you, you can stick around and subscribe to this channel. You can see all of my fully rendered art over on my Instagram, as well as bonus pictures like I did a recent fan art for one of the songs from Epic the Musical. But again, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.